Hey everyone, it's Callum from Cagefront here. Welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome to the channel. We are going to be recapping UFC 310 Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura, which has just taken place, and we did a very good job on this card. We went 13 out of 14, only losing out on Max Griffin against Michael Chiesa. But other than that, got everything else right, and most of them were perfect predictions, so predicting exactly what win method it was. Now, I will be recapping all of the top fights and best moments on the card, kicking it off with the main event. Now, with Alexandre Pantoja and Kai Asakura, man, honestly, Pantoja is just showing who is boss. I mean, the guy is just so dominant at flyweight, ridiculously dominant. He is honestly the most underrated champion in my opinion. It's really going to be difficult to see who can actually beat this guy unless he moves up in weight, which I think is probably one of the only options he does really have. Obviously, he's called out Demetrius Johnson as well, but Demetrius Johnson, that fight is not going to happen. I mean, it'd be amazing, but there's just no actual gain for Demetrius Johnson to actually get from taking that fight. So I highly doubt that's going to happen. But looking at what he can do, possibly Kai France. I mean, Kai France should be next in line. I mean, he's obviously just beaten Steve Erceg, destroyed him by KO, which Pantoja took him to a decision. So it does really put emphasis on that win for Kai France, and he's really like the only one that's really there that's coming off a win in that top 5 that Pantoja hasn't already beat as a champion. So it's pretty tough in flyweight to actually really matchmake there. But honestly, looking at the fight, he just looked so incredibly good. I mean, the chin of steel, the flying knee from Kai Asakura straight off the bat. Obviously, we know very, very fast, very explosive with his striking style, and he came straight out the gates with it, which Asakura honestly should have done, because rounds 1 or 2 were most likely going to be Asakura's, could have been his, or just to get the fight done. That's what he needed, rounds 1 or 2. Past that, I mean, he's had no 5-round experience. Pantoja is just a chain wrestling menace, which was clearly shown in this fight, but straight off the jump. I mean, there's just levels. It's just levels to this game, honestly. It's really just showing that Pantoja is the best in the world at flyweight, and Kai Asakura coming in, not only coming in as in 125 as cutting down to championship weight, which he's never done before. He looked like shit coming off the scale. He weighed in at 124.5, which is a full pound more than he's ever cut before, and he is a big flyweight. So I think that it honestly could be a good move for him going up to bantamweight, because honestly, with those levels that were shown and how fast Pantoja just dispatched of him, I mean, especially with the wrestling, got him down, submitted him with one arm with a rear naked choke. Never been submitted before as Kai Asakura, but Pantoja is just showing that that doesn't matter. He can just do it, because yeah, Pantoja is just an absolute beast. Now, in terms of Japanese hopes, Tatsuro Taira is there, and I think he is the best chance that Japan has, especially in terms of that age range as well. See, Tatsuro Taira is a lot younger, but for Kai Asakura, obviously bringing in more Japanese fans regardless and putting a lot more eyes on the UFC, great business perspective, great plan from the UFC, obviously. But I think for him, if he's gonna stay at flyweight, I kind of want to see him against someone in that mid-ranking area, probably fighting someone like Alex Perez. So if he beats him, he still maintains good stock. I mean, Perez isn't a bad fighter, but he is beatable. I mean, good opponent. Or he moves up and he fights someone a bit lower down in bantamweight, maybe like Kyler Phillips coming off a loss, Song Yadong, where we could have like some form of Asian card, maybe a card in China, possibly a card in Japan. That would be great. Or fighting classic someone like Rob Font. I think that would be a great fight, striking, just a striking style fight stylistically, that fast-paced fight that we could get. I think that would be great if we saw Kai Asakura versus Rob Font. But regardless, ultimately just a fantastic, pretty easy win for Alexandre Pantoja. Now, looking at the co-main again of Shavkat Rakhmanov and Ian Machado Garry. Shavkat looked great. He did look great. He really dug deep in this fight. Obviously, the first time he's been taken to a decision ever, and obviously has won the decision, and I agree with that decision as well. Rounds 1, 2, and 4 I would give him those rounds. And then Ian Garry, I'd give him rounds 3 and 5. Just had the control in the 5th round, and in the 3rd round, he was just landing the better shots on the feet. But Ian Garry, man, no stock loss from this guy. Honestly, like, he's not a fan favorite, but this fight is only giving him more fans, to be honest. Very identifiable holes in Shavkat's strike defense from Ian Garry that he was able to expose, especially with checking the leg kicks. Shavkat was really getting chopped down, especially around that 3rd round. And Ian Garry, honestly, being a 4-1 underdog, incredible. Honestly, incredible seeing how much he could do. And seriously, if it kept going, there's a possible chance that he could have won, because neither of these guys had any issues with their gas tank. 5 rounds was fine, and they weren't just, you know, pit-patter striking or anything like that. They were really heavily wrestling, transitioning a lot, tipping over each other, sprawling, scrambling. There was a lot going on. So, like, seriously, credit to both of them. Obviously, Shavkat kind of knowing that he's going to get the win, so it's really just even more so putting that credit on Ian Garry. And as well with his persona, he handled it very well. Went over to Henry Hooft, obviously, you know, they had a very cordial conversation. Henry Hooft has said that he will definitely be a champion one day. I mean, they were just very respectful, which Ian Garry in certain fights, you sometimes don't see that, but in this against Shavkat, I think it was just very classy from both of them. And Ian Garry as well, the durability. The 1st round, Shavkat landed a very nice overhand. Obviously, Ian Garry felt it. He did the classic Masvidal tongue out, act like I don't feel it, but he clearly obviously did. But moving through the fight as well, I mean, Shavkat throwing those crazy spinning heel kicks, landing very, very nice shots, especially with his straight strikes. His hand speed was probably the most impressive thing that I saw from Shavkat in this matchup. Haven't seen him that quick on the feet, so he is going to be very dangerous. Obviously, moving into his next fight, which is going to be against Belal, remember the decision Muhammad, which obviously we saw him come into the cage, well, try to come into the cage, and then Joe Rogan absolutely ruined him, saying that security doesn't even know that he's the bloody champion and they don't know to let him in or not. And it, yeah, just got worse from there, obviously. Belal goes into the cage, faces off with Shavkat. Doesn't say anything great, obviously, saying, like he says in like every single fight, those boos are going to turn into tears and he's just going to have the last laugh. Obviously, that's the kind of heel that Belal is playing. Granted, fantastic performance against Leon. He is the champion. He can say what he wants, but is it going to get him more fans? Probably not. But we look at even Conor McGregor, and he's even on bloody Belal being the champion. Not that he can talk that much, honestly, at this point, but it's still so funny.
The security doesn't know he's the champ. Look at the state of this. The security doesn't know he's the champ. I'm not surprised, motherfucker. Oh, mate. He is an I'm excited for... Shut your mouth, you little dope. You barely got into the ring. They don't even know you were the champion. Tick. Who's this guy? Who the is that guy in the security's edge, yeah?
But now, as we know that Shavkat, Belal, they're obviously going to be having the title fight, but looking at Ian Garry, in terms of the improvements and the growth of his game through this fight, detrimental. I mean, the takedown defense has improved incredibly. He is very difficult to take down, which would be interesting against a guy like Belal. Very fast, efficient striking. I mean, he had the head kicks going in there very quickly as well. Obviously ripped his shorts open and had pretty much everyone almost seeing his ass, but obviously he had the pants underneath, but he didn't even notice that they ripped. He did not even notice. Obviously he had to change his pants, had no idea why. He said that in the post-fight press conference, so I guess that kind of shows that he's really in the game, which is good. But I mean, the performance really displayed that. He threatened very well with submissions. He was the one that was the closest to actually finishing Shavkat, not the other way around. I mean, in that 5th round with the rear naked choke, so close to getting that under the neck. But by far my most favorite part of the fight was Shavkat's transition to get out of the body triangle and get on top of Ian Garry. Absolutely fantastic timing on that scramble to sprawl out, just get on top of him. Like, he's like a zombie. He just can't die. He's not finishable. And obviously he hasn't finished everyone now, but man, Shavkat, what a performance. Ian Garry, complete credit to him. Shavkat fighting Bilal. I want Ian Garry to fight someone like, probably like Leon Edwards. I think Leon Edwards would be great for him to fight next. Getting that real striking battle. Ian Garry obviously has the takedown offense as well. He was able to get Shavkat down. Now that needs to be a redeeming factor against Leon Edwards, and Leon Edwards needs to improve that takedown defense as well against, you know, obviously with what happened to him against Bilal. So if he can show that against Ian Garry, then that's obviously kudos to him. And if Ian Garry can get him down, kudos to Ian Garry. But also on top of that, we get a great striking fight. So let's see that one. Now we're looking at the Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov split decision. So this was a pretty interesting moment of the card. Very difficult fight to call, in all honesty. I've gone back through the statistics on this as well. And I honestly, even though I had Ciryl Gane as the decision win perfect prediction, I still do think he actually did win. Just rounds 1 and round 2 were for Gane. He outstruck him. Round 1 and 2, he outstruck Volkov. Volkov had the takedowns, which were all good, but Gane in round 1 had 2 submission attempts, a heel hook and a guillotine that he threatened with. And in the second round, he had more control time and was also more active on the feet. So I ultimately would be giving him round 1 and round 2. Obviously, Volkov did have some good moments when it came to like his spinning back fist. If that was an inch closer to Ciryl Gane's chin, night, it would have been gone. That was so fast. I mean, Volkov did look very, very good, especially improving from his last performance. And side note, the guy looks like a 6'7" Paddy Pimblett in this fight. Just intrusive thoughts there, honestly. I literally thought, in a glimpse of my eye, I was talking to a friend, and when he was walking out, I actually thought it was Paddy Pimblett for some stupid reason. But anyway, he did do a very good job in comparison to the last time that he fought Ciryl Gane. Obviously got 50-45 in the last one. This time he came out as the aggressor, which was really what was needed. But Ciryl Gane, he just is quicker. He's got more tools. Obviously threatened more so with submissions on the ground. He had the heel hook attempt. He had the guillotine attempt. Even in the third round, which Volkov definitely won. Don't destroy me in the comments. He did also attempt a Kimura for pretty much that whole entire round, whereas Volkov was just laying on his back. He was actually attempting something. But regardless, obviously the round 2 is a bit of a sway. Round 1 is Gane. Round 3 is Volkov. It's really, honestly, if it came down to it and Volkov won, I wouldn't have argued against it, to be honest. I don't see any form of robbery here. I think that's bullshit to call it a robbery. It's just the fact that there's little inconsistencies when it comes to that second round of what you think is valued more in a round. That's really what it is. But looking at their matchups, I think Gane will probably have to fight Tom Aspinall. I mean, possibly. Obviously, Aspinall is not going to be fighting John Jones. I've spoken about it a million times. That's not happening. Or to redeem himself, possibly fight Sergey Pavlovich. That could be a redeeming quality there. To fight like the big scary striker that Volkov has beaten, or possibly Jailton Almeida even, but I think that Volkov himself should fight Jailton Almeida. I think that makes for an interesting ground game, just technical game, as well as on the feet. Jailton Almeida really proving himself against Volkov, who is looking very good on the feet the more and more he fights. I mean, he's just really sharpening up his tools, and if he keeps going, he will get a title shot at some point without a doubt. Now, I want to look at a certified crime on this card, which is Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling being put so low on this damn card. This is just not only disrespecting Evloev, which isn't the main basis of this, the fact that this is disrespecting Aljamain Sterling, a former bantamweight champion, honestly, arguably the GOAT of bantamweight as well, putting him so far down on the prelims just because of a fight style that he's had to match up against with Evloev. the UFC fucked up, without a doubt. I mean, this should definitely have been ahead of Dominic Reyes and Anthony Smith. Should have at least been that feature prelim slot. Fantastic back and forth chess match. I mean, there were single legs, double legs, bloody suplexes. I mean, everything in this fight when it came to wrestling-based transitions. I mean, there was constant back and forth when it came to obviously momentum, you know, back taking as well, the scrambling. It was fantastic. And even on the feet, it was obviously unorthodox when it came to Aljamain Sterling, which he did land some good shots, and then obviously Evloev as well, putting some nice ones down the pipe as well. But just the disrespect on it, I think it's just a bit of bullshit. This fight should definitely have been placed higher. When it comes to the fight itself, I do believe that Evloev won. He just took advantage of his own advantageous positions with the striking, even though it wasn't hard damage or anything like that. When Aljamain was in advantageous positions himself, he was not striking, whereas Evloev, when he had those advantageous positions, he was striking. And that is going to be the difference when these guys are literally 50-50 scrambling. It's just pretty simple maths in that state. Now, when it comes to matching them up, Movsar is a bit of a tricky one because he does have a few matchups that we could look at. Could fight Diego Lopez for that rematch. We got a storyline there. I think that would be fantastic. Obviously, we do have Lopez possibly being matched up with Josh Emmett, so that could obviously be difficult in terms of timing that. Or we could see Evloev versus Volkanovski, but he also, as well as Volkanovski, probably holding out for titles as well. So it is tricky there. I think Evloev might just have to wait a little bit to see how the division is really going to unravel, to see who he is going to fight. Now, he could honestly fight the winner of Yair Rodriguez and Arnold Allen. Obviously, he's already fought Arnold Allen before, but it could be dependent on how much the featherweight division's actually choked up. So there are options there, but it's really hard in terms of a timeline sense at the moment. Now, Aljamain Sterling, I think it would be great to see him fight probably Bryce Mitchell. I mean, there would be great scrambles there. I mean, the ground game's obviously on check for both of them. Bryce is showing a bit more of a striking side, and I think his level is probably the same as Aljo's in terms of that striking output, really. So it'd be a very evenly matched fight and definitely a fun one. And it'd be good for Aljamain Sterling because he's still fighting someone with a lot of stock and a lot of hype, and he's a fan favorite, so there's not really a loss there. Or Aljo fighting Brian Ortega. I think that's kind of a simple and obvious one. Pretty similar with the same reasons in terms of just that ground game efficiency that they both have, but also testing Aljamain Sterling against Ortega's boxing as well. I think that would be very interesting to see, and just to see more ground transitions that we've literally had, like with him against Movsar Evloev. If we're getting more of that back and forth, I am definitely here for it. And speaking of Bryce Mitchell through that matchup with Aljo, I did want to talk a bit more about him. Very, very happy the guy's back. I mean, so scary getting knocked out by Josh Emmett like that, obviously a year ago, and him coming back, coming into this fight against Kron Gracie, who's not the best opponent, obviously, but he has the name value there, but obviously does have that well-renowned jiu-jitsu game, which he did catch Bryce Mitchell in an armbar at one point, and that was pretty nerve-wracking. He honestly could have lost at that point, but just the transitions of Bryce being smart when it came to his positional awareness as well, and making sure that he could finish him when he was in that top position, obviously landing the elbows down, just absolutely crunching his nose. He seriously did a great job coming back, and I'm so happy that he did come back from such a brutal KO. And obviously, no seatbelts, man. Come on, no seatbelts. If Bryce is winning like that, no one wears seatbelts in cars. But honestly, Kron just doesn't belong in the UFC. I don't think. He's just not UFC material at all. Way too one-dimensional. Can't finish Bryce Mitchell from the bottom position either. I mean, Bryce just came out on top in pretty much every position. I think that honestly, yeah, pretty simple there. I think Kron could possibly honestly get cut, and then Bryce Mitchell, give him Aljamain Sterling. Give him a former champion. Now, looking at Anthony Smith retiring, I mean, not only him, Chris Weidman and Clay Guida, who have that potential to as well. Just a retirement party I want to look at. Anthony Smith, obviously, it's pretty tough for him. He just did not look himself at all through the whole entire fight week. You look through Embedded, you look through any of the interviews that he's doing. I mean, he just does not look like himself, which is fair enough. I mean, he lost his head coach. He obviously felt like he cannot perform without him, and as a fighter, I'm sure that is completely fair. I mean, he has a lot of heart. He was very durable. I mean, the jabs and the twos that Dom Reyes was just picking off on his head, to the point where Anthony Smith was not actually intelligently defending himself at all on the feet, and he did that on purpose. You could tell he was really just testing his own durability, which at that point you can kind of tell with a lot of shit that's going on. I think realistically it is time to call it a day. The guy had a great career. I mean, he obviously had a lot of wins here and a lot of losses there, but you got to remember, he did fight for a title, and there was a chance he could have been a champion, but he took the noble way out and let John Jones win, you know, take the belt, obviously out of DQ fashion as well. So there's a lot of nobility and credit to Anthony Smith's career, which you do have to just give that credit to, honestly. Now, aside from him, Chris Weidman obviously going for a guillotine, scuffing it, Anders finishing him off on the ground, and then Clay Guida obviously getting annihilated by Chase Hooper. I mean, these guys, I think it is time for them to retire. Obviously, even Dana White has said that he's not extending any of their contracts. They will have to obviously either go to another promotion or they will have to retire, which is definitely the best option for the three of them. I mean, all three of them have put on amazing performances. Obviously, Clay Guida, an absolute nutcase against Diego Sanchez, and a lot of his fights, he's just a very unique fighter, which is always entertaining. Chris Weidman speaks for himself, middleweight champion, knocked out Anderson Silva. That's obvious there, great career. Now, Anthony Smith as well, obviously being a title challenger. They're all great, but it is time for the new generation to pull through. And without a doubt, fighter to watch, gotta be giving it to Chase Hooper. This guy, obviously fighting Clay Guida, who is basically like 17 years older than him, almost double his bloody age at this point. But man, Chase Hooper, he is looking incredible. The most unassuming fighter. I mean, very well-rounded game. His striking has just improved so much from fight to fight. Like, honestly, he just looks so good. Him staying at lightweight in the toughest division, I still have confidence with him going through and fighting tougher fighters. I think that there's just so many opportunities for him in that division. Obviously, being in the UFC for 5 to 6 years now, this guy is really growing through at the toughest of competition and training with guys like Mikey Musumeci in terms of his jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's just getting all the right treatment and doing all the right things to become a fighter that is going to be extremely dangerous. And he's using those tools now. He's using fantastic teep kicks, using the jabs, mixing the hooks well in with them as well. He's generating a lot of power. On the ground, he is a freak. He is definitely a problem on the ground, one of the best at 155 for sure. And I think we need to see him against someone who has takedown defense that can stop him from getting it there in the first place, as well as someone that does have good striking on the feet, who's a natural kickboxer. And I think he needs to fight Nasrat Haqparast. Nasrat Haqparast, very, very good takedown defense, natural kickboxer as well, very durable too. And I think that is just the perfect opportunity for Chase Hooper to really break those inconsistencies against possible opponents that he might have. I hope you enjoyed today's recap video, and if you want to see more MMA-based content, definitely check out the video on the screen, and please like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.